Okay, good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see such a great turnout here today, and I hope you're all keeping safe and well in this strange new world of ours. We've got a fantastic turnout, which is great to see. Welcome to our second SAM Learning educational webinar for MAT leaders this academic year, and this one promises to be one of our best yet. My name is Stephanie King and I hold the role of Commercial Director here at SAM Learning, and I'm joined by our Regional Director Craig Hendelman, who, time permitting, will be taking questions from you all at the end of today's webinar. We do encourage your participation in our webinars, so if you would like to ask a question, please do use the questions functionality available to you through the control panel that you will see on the right-hand side of your screen. I've also provided some reader material in the handout section there too, so do feel free to download your brochure. And you'll also notice that there are some impact reports there as well that are especially relevant to the content of this webinar, so do ensure you take a copy of those too. So, if everyone is sat down comfortably, we shall begin. So working closely together, myself, Craig and the other directors here at SAM Learning often discuss the circumstances of education today, and these conversations play a massive part in how we choose to develop the content and delivery of that content to our family of user schools and NATs. And it was in one of those conversations that we were discussing the power of positive thought, and how in a world that now more than ever needs more positivity, we can embrace our position as one of the leading providers of educational technology in the UK to do more to help people succeed in a world that sometimes feels like it is geared up to do exactly the opposite. Craig mentioned that one of his favourite quotes was from an American writer and editor, Dorothea Brande. She said, "To guarantee success, act as if it were impossible to fail." And we all took a collective moment, looked at each other, and knew that we were onto something. You see, since we started to host these webinars, we have always made sure one of our consistents is that by the end of each webinar, our attendees have learned something new about SAM Learning, but also knew that above and beyond anything else that we could tell you about our system, that it is genuinely and independently proven to increase student attainment. It is a clear-cut, evidentially backed statement, and we as a company, with that evidence in our holsters, are in a position to guarantee learner progression as if failure to do so were impossible. But as powerful as it is, and in a time when budgets are restricted and money difficult to come by, we absolutely understand that there would be doubts for a system that promises to increase attainment at GCSE. What guarantees can be made other than if you don't see the promised progression, then you are free to not renew your subscription in 12 months' time. Especially if this system was purchased centrally by the MAT for all schools, we are talking potentially large amount of money with no guarantee whatsoever that the spend will have the desired result on student attainment. Well, and this is where we as a company now differentiate ourselves from every other EdTech provider in the UK, because for us, this is now no longer good enough, and we are going to do something unheard of, something big. Simply put, we are going to guarantee that SAM Learning will, over the next 12 months, play a part in the progression of the student attainment in your school. And if you do not see progression, then we are going to refund every single penny that you paid us directly back into your Trust's bank account. No ifs, no buts, and no arguments. It is a bold statement and an even bolder business move, but we can offer this to multi-academy trusts because we have the independent evidence behind us to support it. And the word independent is what is important here. We have not and will not commission a report that is controlled by us and displayed to make us look good. In fact, we have been the subject of independent reports that span all the way back to 2002. And more recently, in 2020, a report commissioned by the Education Endowment Fund that analysed 300,000 students in 250 schools over the last 9 years showed that even 18 years since the first time that we were independently proving, SAM learning are still making waves when it comes to student progression. Now, before I go into more detail as to exactly how we can guarantee learner progression in your schools, I wanted to delve just a little deeper into the impact that SAM learning is being proven to have in any school. Both the Education Endowment Fund and the Fisher Family Trust reports show that when a student logs onto SAM learning for 10 hours throughout the course of their GCSE year, they receive 1 GCSE grade better in 2 subjects, an equivalent progress aid gain of +0.2, but where the impact of SAM learning becomes even more impressive is when we focus specifically on the impact it has on your disadvantaged students who see, on average, with the same level of usage, 1 GCSE grade better in 3.5 subjects. That's an equivalent progress aid gain at +0.35, which, as I'm sure you'll agree, is really impressive. And while as educators we are always looking to increase student progression, now more than ever, the attainment and social mobility gaps are as large as we have ever seen them, and when looking for ways to close the gap, the very same EEF report that shows the impact SAM learning will have on student progression across the board also touches on 4 points to help schools narrow and eventually close those gaps. And while we have touched on those points in more detail in a previous webinar, it is certainly of no harm to quickly recap that as a school or trust looking to effectively close the gap, you should be looking at the following: an evidence-informed approach, and only using systems and strategies that have infallible evidence behind them to support their efficacy. Effective pupil assessment and feedback, a system in place that will quickly and easily identify gaps in knowledge across the board through student assessment that can inform and validate teacher judgments and encourage improvement both by teacher direction but also by independent learning. And professional development in the effective use of technology. Continuously training and supporting staff to not only make the most out of the technological resources in your school, but to also empower them to find new and better ways of working to deliver outstanding outcomes. And finally, extending school time. Not necessarily just by increasing the length of time students are on school grounds, but also by increasing the digital reach of your teaching toolkit so that even at home, targeted use of before and after school programmes are more accessible to those that need them the most. And the great thing here is that SAM learning, above and beyond the guarantee in learner progression, will support every single one of these strategies from the evidence we explored earlier to supplying you and your schools with a fantastic reporting suite that clearly shows which topics are secure in their understanding or not, but also clearly shows progression and allocating each trust a dedicated school success manager to provide unlimited support and training to encourage the effective use of technology at no extra cost. So hopefully by this point in time, you're thinking, great, so let me get this straight. SAM learning will guarantee learner progression over the course of 12 months. And if we don't see progress, I'll get all of my money back. Absolutely. There are no ifs, no buts, or no credit notes, and no catches here. It's as simple as that. The only thing that we ask is that your schools actually use the system, which means 3 things in principle. Learners at each school complete an average of at least 10 task hours on SAM learning across the academic year, including disadvantaged learners, whose usage should be 75% higher than the average use of non-disadvantaged learners. At least half of the teaching staff and middle leaders are actively using SAM learning to set 5 or more learning tasks and intervention groups as recommended by your school success manager. And your schools engage with training and support provided by your school success manager, complete their 90-day launch programme and subsequent termly progress meetings. And that's it. We will simply compare their 2021 GCSE results with their 2019 GCSE results and the standard overall progress improvement measures. Should there be no improvement in GCSE results and progress, and the school need effective use of the SAM Learning Guarantee Package, SAM Learning will provide you with a full refund via back transfer to the Trust's bank account at the price you paid. Now, we are aware that not everyone will know what SAM Learning is, what it does and how it works. And for those of you that would like an online demonstration specific to your trust, that is absolutely an option available to you. Just simply get in touch via the questions box here on this webinar, or alternatively, I will leave contact details for you all at the end of today's presentation. However, in a nutshell, SAM Learning is one of the UK's leading and most widely used systems to assess, review and monitor student comprehension for all key stages, all subjects and all exam boards. Our library of literally hundreds and thousands of exam board map questions are all either automatically marked by the system or self-marked by the student for more critical self-evaluation. You can even create your own content-rich activities, embedding YouTube videos, podcasts and pictures to make SAM Learning activities that are as unique as your students are. Our three-wave intervention model also allows your schools to quickly and effectively target work to all classes and differentiation groups, identified intervention groups, or individual students, so that you can be certain that each student's need and learning style is being catered for with a task set at their ability level. As shown earlier, the system automatically tracks and analyses all work completed by students, whether that was a task or homework set by teachers or a task completed independently, to clearly show topical gaps in a subject, but also the marked progression of that student on a detailed level, all the while offering each student a gamified, interactive and engaging interface for them to compete on leaderboards, explore interactive worlds and challenge their friends and gear up their own unique avatars with exclusive outfits. And SAM Learning is used fantastically well by a number of schools all around the world. And we are always overwhelmed at the response of teachers that reply to our call to arms in asking who would like to speak about their own experiences of SAM Learning in our webinars. Today's guest speaker is Neil Mackay, the National Academy's Director at SAM Learning, who brings his expertise and experience as not only a head teacher, but a MAT leader to help schools successfully meet and overcome challenges and roadblocks to student access. Today, Neil will be talking about how schools and MATs across the UK have used educational technology to support with student progression. So I'm now going to hand the mic over to Neil. And Neil will now be sharing with you a presentation that he's produced based on his experiences. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Stephanie. Thank you. I'm fortunate to have the role of working directly with multi-academy trust leaders and their head teachers and principals, supporting effective strategic leadership solutions. We work to maximise the impact of remote and in-class learning technology to drive progress upwards, regardless of learners' starting points and attainment gaps. This means regularly working with executive teams, leadership teams, middle leaders, understanding the unique context of each multi-academy trust or school, and helping to weave into everyday school practice routines that deliver results. As you are all experiencing, this year is quite unlike any other. There are many additional pressures on schools and their multi-academy trust central resources, not least delivering on strategies across multiple sites to reverse lack of progress due to lockdown and school closures. From discussion with multi-academy trusts, it is clear that it is not only disadvantaged learners that are months behind in their progress, it is everyone, but the gap is clearly wider than ever. Of course, many trusts are focusing efforts on the new year 11, but they are also focusing on the years 7 through to 10 to make up the lack of learning time from lockdown. From experience, the challenge of trust leadership is always present, but this year more than most. From talking to a number of leaders, the rate of progress for this year's Year 11 needs to exceed that of most years. And with there being wider gaps than previous, the talk is about keep up and catching up. It's clear from the recent decade-long efficacy study that where students use SAM learning for more than 10 hours, there is a significant positive impact, equivalent of a P8 score of plus 0.2 to plus 0.35 across all subjects for disadvantaged learners. So what are trusts doing? Well, trust executive teams recognise that systematic organisational challenges are hard to embed. And the main core focus this year will be firmly on teaching and learning and accelerating progress of individuals and groups. So what solutions are they using? Well, as you will know, multi-academy trusts require systems that easily enable the identification of achievement gaps remotely and across multiple sites, that enable the teachers to teach to secure the learning in these gaps, where you can monitor and then test the progress. Now, SAM Learning does all of this seamlessly, whilst allowing teaching and learning leads and teachers to focus on feedback, which we know is the most effective tool for impact. SAM Learning allows schools to identify the learning gaps. Activities and tests are set to assess learners' knowledge and skills. This in turn self-marks. It gives teachers insight into individual learners' metacognition and automatically gives them clear gaps analysis. Trusts are then creating bespoke intervention groups on SAM Learning for targeted groups of learners that require different interventions. Their teachers are attached to the groups on SAM Learning. Relevant activities are then set to target these gaps. Teachers teach the gap content, they set activities to assess the learning and progress made, and this, again, is automatically marked and then used to inform future teaching. The routine is fairly simple. They set the work, assess, monitor the gaps, teach, set and test again. Some multi-academy trusts are developing their use of SAM learning even further in pursuit of accelerated progress and evidence-based practice. Trusts with a focus on securing future recall in preparation for examinations are using their SAM learning gaps analysis. They are targeting individual and group learning gaps by setting SAM learning activities to appear in the future. The aim is to provide learners with the opportunity to recall prior learning throughout the year in an ongoing fashion. An aim is also to interrupt the forgetting curve, and it's worth noting that this can be done centrally, trust-wide. For the learners, as the activities just appear from nowhere, it will make them apply prior knowledge cold, helping these learners to retain it. It's supporting the securing of movement of knowledge from the short to the long-term memory ready for examinations. Another bonus of SAM learning is that with learners' work being automatically marked, assessments are sent directly to staff so that they can easily monitor the identified gaps throughout the year. It reduces teacher workload and it enables them to employ advanced teaching and learning approaches. All activity can also be monitored centrally, and everything is completely transparent. The strategy to maintain learners can keep up whilst systematically and effectively targeting the catch-up, all in the knowledge of the impact SAM learning has been shown to have on outcomes. This strategy can even be continued remotely, so contingency is sorted and local lockdown will not impede success, forming part of Trust's risk register contingency plans. Thank you. I'll hand back to Stephanie.
Okay, thank you for that, Neil. And I'm sure everybody has found your contributions this morning very insightful. And if any of you would like to learn more from Neil or one of our educational directors, feel free to get in touch and we can arrange a free of charge strategy session for you. Okay, so looking at time, it looks like we are coming to the end of today's webinar, and I can see that there are a number of questions and demonstration requests. So Craig, over to you. Could you run through the questions that's come in this morning, please?
Yeah, thank you, Steph. Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for not only joining us here today, but for taking the time to ask some really great questions. I'll try to keep an eye on time and answer as many as I can. But again, if I don't get the opportunity to answer your question here today, then either myself or Steph will be in touch with you soon after today's webinar. Okay, so scrolling through, it does seem like a lot of the questions we have are very similar in nature and content. So if I answer Jeff and Simon's questions, they should hopefully provide clarity for the remainder of all the questions we've had in. So to combine those two questions, Jeff and Simon have said, This sounds a bit like a too good to be true situation. How can you be so sure that it will work in every context and for every trust ethos? And Simon asked, it sounds quite easy to reach the criteria for the guarantee. Could you clarify, is it 10 task hours over a year and just setting 5 tasks in intervention groups per staff member? Well, thank you both. I can absolutely understand and appreciate where you're both coming from. After all, I think it's safe to assume that every one of us here at some point has had an experience of being oversold to or bamboozled with jargon and promises that were never delivered. However, we've taken every step and every precaution here to make our proposal for your guarantee clearly defined so that there are no misunderstandings and that everything is crystal clear, that if you meet the criteria that Stephanie touched upon earlier, and absolutely, if you do not see progression at GCSE in 2021, then we will refund every single penny back to you. And it really is just as simple as that. With regards to your trust ethos, we have to remember that as a company, we've been around for some time now, and during that time, we've worked with thousands of schools and dozens of trusts, and we've always been in a fortunate position where we can listen to the needs of our schools and develop our systems to meet each need and each ethos as much as possible. We've actually done that really successfully as well. So we are confident that regardless of your context, there'll be something for you within SAM Learning and our school success team, who are ex-MAT leaders, head teachers, amongst other senior roles in educations, who will work with you to ensure exactly that. And yes, we are proud to say that on the evidence of the impact of SAM Learning shows that all it takes is 10 task hours on SAM Learning to see progression over the year 11 academic year. It might be useful to quickly clarify that a task hour isn't accumulated by a student that just logs on to SAM Learning and then goes off to play computer games while SAM sits in the background. Task hours are only really going to be generated through active study on SAM Learning, so the amount of time that that student is actually engaging with the content. They also can't open a task and expect the clock to keep ticking should they walk away, as the activity will simply time out and they'll get 0. And those 10 hours can be generated through independent study or teacher assigned tasks. So when we advise that at least half of your teachers and middle leaders set 5 tasks as well as 5 intervention groups, we do so on the assumption that the average secondary school has close to 70 teaching staff. So if each of them are setting 5 tasks, we can be fairly confident that a fair amount of work will be completed by your students and that your staff will receive impactful and actionable data to inform their own judgments, identify how secure or insecure knowledge is on a per student or group level, and then set catch-up or intervention groups based on those newly identified criteria. So yes, we only ask for those 10 task hours per student, 5 set tasks and 5 intervention groups per teacher, because not only are the impact studies and evidence clear, but because we know that SAM Learning with proper engagement from staff becomes an integral and impactful part of your school ecosystem of learning and assessment tools. We'll also put a copy of our guarantee terms in a handout section of your control panel for you to keep handy. And I hope that answers your questions. However, I'm always happy to chat, so please do feel free to get in touch after this webinar should you wish to. Thank you. Back to you, Steph.
Thanks, Craig. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of yet another SAM Learning webinar. But before you leave us today, I am pleased to say that we do offer additional discounts for trust-wide purchases made with SAM Learning. Therefore, if you are interested in exploring our MAT packages in more depth, it could work out very cost-effective for your online offering. So please book in an appointment to find out more about what we can do for you. The more schools that come on board, the more you can save. I also want to direct you to the handout section of your control panel. As Craig mentioned, I've put in copies of the reports discussed today, should you wish to save those. Otherwise, from Craig and myself, we wish you all the very best and we look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Bye for now.